to item 14.
What are we up to now? Special housing. Hey, it's already been on the radio this morning, hasn't it? Yes. 100 houses.
Hayden, welcome. Oh, you've been waiting a while.
Kia ora tātou.
So this report follows our August 1 meeting, I think, where the committee requested more information on affordability. We were swamped with information on supply, but we wanted more information on affordability and improving affordability and addressing supply with the key focuses of the Accord, and there was a feeling that we weren't addressing the affordability issues. So that's how this report arrives. In your hands, John.
Yeah, so, kia ora tātou. Just to recap, what you've asked us to do is just two things. That's to understand and report back on the number of relative affordable consented houses under the housing accord and special housing areas, and with a code of compliance certificates issued, code for people able to live in them, and whether all statutory declarations of the relative affordable dwellings have been provided to Auckland Council. So just a little bit of context for that, because I think it's important, is the SHA areas are quite a discrete targeted solution across Auckland. It's about 4,800 hectares. Obviously Auckland's a lot larger than that, and there's some questions around what affordability means outside the SHA areas. And we'll talk about that a little bit. So the results, I'll basically just point out, I'll take the report as read, but I'll point out a couple of important points, I suppose, and maybe just a little bit of a clarification. If you turn to table 2, you can see that's on after item 30. You'll see that retained affordable across the whole of the SHAs with dwellings with codes of compliance certificates issued and completed dwellings is 482 out of the 2,077. And the relative affordable, so the first one's kind of not what you'd call in the free market. The second one's the relative affordable, which are a bit more free market, subject to some conditions, and being first-home buyers is the obvious first one, is just 98 that have had dwellings with code of compliance certificate. But I would probably point out there's 1,353 which are actually in the pipeline that will in time, that have been consented, fall into that category at some stage in the near future. I guess the last observation in terms of the tables, in terms of the numbers, because it's full of numbers, and my apologies, is that for the Housing New Zealand consented and constructed dwellings, there's 2,000 which have been sites and dwellings approved, 2006.
Excuse me.
So be aware that it is both relative and retained. However, the majority are obviously retained. That's a really important point. Not all of them, but the majority of them are. And does not include any of the other social housing providers that are also operating within the special housing areas. So that's, so in other words, those numbers, if you like, live inside the top table. So they're partitioned out, but they form the numbers, so they're not extra, they're all part of the same suite. So that's probably as far as I need to take it, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Hayden. Members, I'll move the A and the B, and if you can read the B. I just have a question on the timeliness of this report. We refer there to it coming back in the first half of 18. That's as late as the end of June, or in our case, our meetings are early in the month, would be the early June.
Sure.
Can you just give us a sense of what is involved in addressing the B, and could it be back in the first quarter of 2018? What's our resourcing looking like? I know the same staff are involved with quite a lot of work at the moment.
Yeah, sure.
And the ports issue, reports?
I guess it's one of those kind of a little bit of undiscovered country stuff, to be honest. What we can do is we can go away over the next little while and give some feedback around that. But this will take a piece of work to understand the full extent of the questions you're asking. But by the early in 2018, we'll have a pretty good handle on it. So if we've got any problems with the dates, we can certainly let you know. If it's bring it back forward a little bit earlier, we can also...
I think the bulk of that work would be done inside my group anyway, because they're going to have to go and do the research, and these people would be, I'm sure, thankfully let off the hook at that point. They can measure it afterwards, so...
Okay, members, the B is out. A number of councillors have come to me and expressed concern about the issue of affordability. Affordability was not really a major focus of the Mayoral Housing Task Force. That was about supply. The scope did not entertain that. That was quite deliberate, but there is recommendation 6 out of the some 31 recommendations for the Mayoral Housing Task Force, which does focus on it. And so I think if we can leverage off that recommendation to build a body of work to address this wider discussion of how this council might address with others, because it's not going to be limited to us and Wellington, and community housing providers and others might address affordability. Okay, questions at this time? Councillor Hulse, and then Councillor Casey, Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The little bit of Groundhog Day going on here. You know, here we sit again, 6 years on, going, what are we going to do about housing affordability? We are not the solution to housing affordability. You know, we fought tooth and nail to explain, sorry, I'm going to have my speaking in, there is a question. We fought tooth and nail with Nick Smith to say, land supply will not make a blind bit of difference to housing affordability. You know, hello, 6 years on, it hasn't. It hasn't made squat difference. We knew it wouldn't, and it hasn't. The bottom line is we are enablers. We don't build houses. We are not the answer. Yet again, Mr. Chair, we're making ourselves the problem. We're saying, what are we going to do about housing affordability? So I'm now unfettered. I'm not sitting in that chair trying to do the Auckland Plan Committee anymore, so I can now be completely blunt. I think we're cocking this up by making it our problem. We've got reports sitting on shelves in my office, your office, the Deputy Mayor's office that actually have the answer to this. We're just ignoring it. The bottom line is the government is the answer to this. Changing the tax laws are the answer to this. Changing the banking regulations are the answer to this. Putting more money into building affordable housing is the answer to this. We are not the answer. I'm sorry if I'm getting grumpy, but every time we have a recommendation like that saying, what are we going to do? We take everybody neatly off the hook. And for once in my life, I'm not going to vote against this because they'll, you know, that will be completely misinterpreted that I don't support affordable housing. Christ, I've spent the last 6 years trying to get this off the ground. But Mr. Chair, you know, we've got people like Leone, Freeman, who have had the answer. We've got the Housing Summit that has provided the answer. We have developers that are coming to us giving the answer. We will have a new government in the next couple of days who might finally acknowledge the fact that there's a housing crisis and we need to pony up with them. Let's not make it our problem. It's not. We've got land the size of Hamilton to provide. We don't need to provide any more. Now someone needs to put serious coin into this and get with the program and get the houses built, and that is the government. So, Mr. Chair, good intent, you know, good on you, but this ain't the answer.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Casey.
And I forgot what the question was.
Don't you agree? Don't you agree?
You know, let's not make our poor
We'll assume
staff go around
that there
it
was a
again.
second. Do I have a second for that motion? You a second?
Councillor Hulse's motion.
No. A second for the motion that is on the board.
Chair's
The-
motion.
I'm happy with A, but not B.
Oh, it's not you then.
Not me.
I'm not doing it either. Councillor Casey. I'm not either.
Do I have a second for the B? Okay, the B's not there then, it's just,
Can we just
I'm
read
happy
it?
with A.
Can we just read it?
Hold on,
Councillor?
I can't read it. The red's
Sorry, why people read it, Mr Chair, can I just, I'll clarify. I'm not
It's
saying
another
let's
report.
not do it. It's just let's not get another report. Let's actually get some of those critical reports off the shelves that they're sitting on, and let's, as soon as the government's formed, let's just act on them. Let's just
Okay. Well,
make
it's
housing
actually-
affordability an absolutely critical action after Thursday, not another report.
Who put up
well, look,
that?
I hear that, but there was a
some
vote,
clarification.
against the affordability criteria in
Can I
this
just have
very
some-
room this time last
I'd like
year.
to talk about.
Well, just because it doesn't work.
And others,
someone must have put
others
B
would
up.
attest very differently. The fact is, members, we've got a critical issue around affordability. The Housing Accord did not address affordability. It addressed supply well. It had two key purposes, and it's seconded by Member Taipari. And I will continue my speaking turn now. A Housing Accord did reasonably well in addressing supply. It did not remotely address affordability, and affordability was never reported on for quarter after quarter after quarter. It was not recognised by this council, and it should have been.
Oh, that's
And-
not right. Sorry, Mr Chair, that's
No.
not correct.
Well, look, I'm sorry, you've had your speaking turn, Councillor Hulse. The former council voted down the affordability criteria in the unitary plan by a slim margin. You will remember.
13-7,
We,
actually.
13-7's not so slim then, is it? Thank
I
you.
was one of the seven. So
We
was
could
John.
have retained that affordability criteria. That's history. I'm saying the problem has not gone away. There's no sign of the problem going away. And while we are not the single answer, these motions do not suggest we are the single answer at all. And neither is any single other body, be it government or the private sector or the community housing sector, let alone us. We are not the single owner. We're going to have to come together and combat this together. Since the accord was signed up in October 16, the median house price in this city has gone from 530,000 to 817,000. The accord was to address affordability, and while that accord was in play, a 50% increase in the median house price. The average house price is now $1 million, and if I go to Oraki, it's 1.3. In my ward, it's 1.2. If I go to the Isthmus of Albert Eden, it's also 1.2. It is out of reach. People are exiling themselves from this town because they don't feel there is a place here. It's not just those on lower incomes, it's those on middle incomes, it's professionals. We heard from teachers at our governing body meeting quite recently. This is a problem that we have to acknowledge, not dismiss it and sign it over to some other party. We've got to fess up on this and recognise that the accord failed dismally. I do want to acknowledge, though, mana whenua groups, and if you look at some of those numbers, in terms of the retained affordability numbers, the biggest success story there is in one development. 40% of the numbers come from just one development, and that's the Waimouth development undertaken by a consortia of mana whenua groups and Housing Foundation and others, and they're to be commended. And maybe that is a way forward for us. Maybe Panuku is a way forward for us.
Been doing it.
And a lot more other tools that these reports might be sitting on shelves, but boy, we've got to dust some of this stuff off and start reading it again, because it's not cutting through at the moment. And I think Aucklanders would be pretty aghast if we were to just sit on our hands again here today. So thank you, Member Taipari, for seconding this. This is a body of work that we've actually got to take some action on, because the accord failed in that regard, in my view. Councillor Walker.
Yeah, I think B is a complete waste of time, and I agree with Councillor Hulse We know what the answers are. We've had reports on what the problem is. We know that it goes to certainty for building. We know that it goes to economies of scale and finance. We know that. We've told the government that. They don't get it. That's a problem with the government, frankly. But I don't really want to waste time and effort on another report. Let's send the government the information that we've already got. Let's take the information that we've already got and communicate it better. But I don't think we need another report. And just to consolidate that, we know that we've got, I think, 422,000 sites that are available now. So supply is not an issue. Now, we know that. We don't need a report to tell us that because we've already had that. So I agree with Councillor Hulse.
Councillor Casey.
Are we still on questions? Because
And
I've
it's
just
moved
been
and
listening
seconded.
to some speeches. I thought we were talking today about the special housing areas and been looking forward to this report. I'm sorry I missed all the media, so everybody's talking about stuff that's been in
The
the
chair's
public.
in the Herald.
I'm sorry, I was out early this
I'm not aware
morning.
of in the Herald, so.
But,
online.
you know, are we, can somebody give them the flavour of that? Are we happy with? All I remember is a whip being cracked over my head day on day to get these SHAs through because it was going to solve the problem. This doesn't solve the problem. So what's been said in the media? Who's been getting interviewed about this report? Because I'd like to know what's been said. I couldn't get it on my phone because this doesn't get good reception.
Wasn't me.
Can I get the flavour of it from whoever was interviewed and I don't know who it was?
Someone asked Chris about this because it's on the public agenda, and Chris said it was a failure, which is.
Oh, good. That's what I wanted to know. So can you just elaborate on that? Because I think, I know that we've just spent a lot of time on that bit, but I haven't addressed that yet. I'm still thinking about this report.
So there were two key purposes of the Accord: increasing supply and improving affordability. We have not improved affordability. The
Didn't do
median
either.
price of houses is 50% plus over the median price when the Accord was signed. And if you look at the number of relative and retained affordable units that have been delivered, it is a very minuscule number.
Pathetic.
Yeah, yeah.
That's true. Good. So that's what you said.
No one's arguing that.
Okay. My questions relate to the one that interested me most was the the number of inactive special housing areas. I see that's been reduced from 25 to 20. Can you just tell me? You can use Oruarangi Road as one of them if you like. Can you just tell me if that's one of them? And also Ascot Avenue in Mount Albert, which has been lying fallow for the last 6 years.
So through the chair, Oruarangi's had their plan variation approved for that
That's out
site.
of the 25.
So that's out of the
right.
20.
So tell me about these 20 that are lying there fallow.
So the reason the number has reduced since we last reported to you in August is we contacted some of the developers and they came back to us.
You contacted
We
all of
contacted,
them?
most of them.
All of them?
Not all of them,
Why not?
most of them, just because we couldn't get hold of a number of them. So in some situations, some of the sites have been sold. So the developer that had applied for the SHA is no longer part of the development of that site, so they were unable to be contacted. In some situations, the developers have advised that they have had a development partner in place when they applied for the SHA. That's no longer progressing. Others have advised, or one particular developer had a couple of SHAs. He's focusing his attention on one specifically, and another one advised that they just couldn't make it work financially.
Very disappointing.
So through the chair, just something I just want to emphasise is the numbers that are in the report, what has been consented up until the 30th of June. So there is still quite a significant supply to come through. So some of the greenfield SHAs, for example, are going to be a 20 to 25 year build out period. So as we mentioned in the August, when we came and saw you in August, is that through the plan variation process, there is affordability criteria that has been applied to those precincts. So any development that occurs in those particular locations will still need to provide the affordable housing through the consenting process.
Thank
Right.
you. Councillor Watson. Sorry, come back to
Just
Councillor
well, just on to that now. What I've raised in whatever forum and workshop I've been at is that I'd like a plan change, a unitary plan change to put the affordable housing provisions back in. Because I think we've realised we made a mistake. And I keep asking how we do that, and that's not addressed up there at all. So that's one way of doing it, but that's a very clear way that we can say, actually, because you've just mentioned it, we made a decision. Well, it's a very narrow decision, and I think on reflection, people may have changed their minds on that. We do change our minds.
Can I
And
just
I'd
go
like that to come back to us, and I
Mr.
don't
Quinn?
know what the way is, and I keep saying, how can we do that? So I'd like to see that added to it.
Can I just ask Mr. Quinn if this, within the scope of B, allows us to explore options like that?
We'll investigate that. Yeah. I just need to work with the team to.
I don't want it to go to a housing task force. It's something that we can do. It's, if we can readdress that issue and see if we still feel the same way, that would be the first thing. Take a vote and then look at the options after that. And I'm happy to bring a notice of motion to a committee, be it this one or any other, or any governing body. But I do think we need to look at it again.
So it is to report back to this committee, and I'm hearing from Mr. Quinn that the very solution, possibly, that you point out, Councillor Casey, would be taken into account.
Could be.
Could be.
So, yeah, so we're happy to at least come back and advise what the process would be and how difficult or not that would be.
I can't hear. Sorry.
So we'd be happy to come back to you and advise what the process would be for a plan change and the likelihood of success of that.
That would be great, but how long is that going to take?
I
It's just that I see it's quite simple. If there's political will to revisit affordable housing provisions in the unitary plan, that's number one. So we discuss that and we say yes or no, it goes through or no, and if it doesn't, well, that's it. So it's a political decision first. So I don't think it needs to go
I'd
through
need to
that.
go away and reflect that, yes.
Well, maybe I can talk to the chair because I think it's political. Through the chair,
Well-
do you see a way of doing this?
I see, I've asked the staff to provide a way forward, and they've come forward with the recommended B to address the issues of affordability, and one of those strands might be through a plan change. One of them might be, but there might be other ways we could address it as well, councillor. And so this is generally quite open, and for the staff to then take this resolved position, if it becomes resolved, away, and then report back to us.
Okay, so can we add it in there, just to tack it onto the
Well,
end?
do you want including
Yeah.
possible
Not
plan change?
including, just including plan change to address retained affordability.
Is there a willingness to accept that as an example?
Yes.
E.g., is it an E.g.?
Yeah, what would
We'll
you like?
we'll work the words up. Can you support the staff there? Thank you, Councillor Casey. Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Yes, I support the intent of B there. I think Councillor Darby's just trying to keep the issue alive if it doesn't need keeping alive, and especially when you look, I'm interested in what's actually built, after 4 years, what's in the pipeline or what's coming. I'm interested in the numbers that actually built and people are living in now, because that's 4 years, nearly half a decade. Take out, as Councillor Casey said, Waimahia, 241, take out of the retained affordability, take out whatever Hobsonville Point contributes to the relative affordability, and I think the numbers are even lower than the very low numbers that are already there. In fact, Councillor Darby hit it on the head when he was being interviewed. It's been a pretty dismal failure. I think from my point of view, what's made it worse is that it created the illusion that something was being done. So while we were busily passing all the SHAs, the word affordability had a great currency. Well, there's nothing to show for it, really, just a couple of houses. Councillor Darby also mentioned and I'm glad Councillor Casey's picked this one up, the vote in the Unitary Plan Committee, because that was the one opportunity where we did have a chance to legislate for a 10% affordable housing component. Instead, we accepted the arguments of the developers, really, the developers of one flavour or another, who said by building affordable homes, we would be increasing the price of the other houses. So they were saying that if there's a 10% affordable component, that would mean then the other 90% would have to go up. Well, when you look at what's being built at Hobsonville, the relative affordable ones are smaller. They cost less to build. They're smaller houses. They're not the same price or not getting the same specs in the houses that are outside the 10% component. So that was a fallacious argument. So that is definitely one very simple, straightforward mechanism that we could look to employ as quickly as we possibly could, if indeed we are interested in actually doing something about affordability. In terms of another report or waiting for stuff we already know, I'm assuming that if that's the case, then the report will be written rather quickly. If we already know it, we've got all the information, it's not going to take a Rhodes Scholar to do the research, is it? Because it's going to be all there. So I agree with Councillor Darby's desire to keep this alive and to let us do what we can. We know we can't build them, but we can be a lot more prominent than we have been in the last term of council, and actually trying to put some acid on the people who can do something about that. And on that point, we have been kind of woefully inadequate in my view. So I think this is well worth supporting.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper?
Thank you. Just one question first, and then I'll speak if I may, because everyone else is at this point. When the Mayoral Housing Affordability Task Force came back to us, there were 31 odd recommendations, and the governing body adopted, I think it was about 16 that were our responsibility and that we could affect. And I just need to be reminded, so this one was recommendation 6, are you saying wasn't in that group of 16, or was? Are you adding it in now?
No, I believe it was. Hayden, are you conversant with the Mayoral Housing Task Force recommendations?
No,
I believe it was one of those, but of course this is saying that it's bringing priority to this recommendation.
Well, okay, so Mr. Chairman, I mean, we already voted a few short months ago to adopt the ones we had and work on them already. And now I don't see why we're doing this, because I'm not against affordability, but what we could see, and it's been well canvassed, is that our part of the many pieces that there are to get affordability was to free up land supply in the unitary plan. That's what we've done. We've done our part hugely, and probably way too much capacity, to be quite honest, because we didn't often put it in the right places. So for me, you know, I think I agree with Councillor Hulse. I mean, why would we try and take another thing on that we're going to fail? We've already failed in this. We already failed in the affordability option because we couldn't make it work. And the reason twice as many people voted to take that out of the unitary plan than voted to keep it in, bar one, is because we knew it isn't workable. We had no policing or monitoring or compliance ability to do anything about it. It wasn't because we didn't want it, it's because it's not workable in our realm, and that's the issue. And there are lots of people. Yes, the government needs to put pressure on the bloody banks who won't lend to apartment builders unless they can guarantee a 20% return. You know, we can't control, and nor can any government, the fact that the Australian banks want all their money back, all the profits that are generated here to go back to Australia to prop them up. We can't do anything about that, sadly, because it's New Zealand money going over to Australia. But I think for me, I just think that we're setting us up to fail again. And the other issue I do have a real issue with is, we said when we put the unitary plan to bed that we wouldn't be running around doing just random plan changes all over the place just to suit us, and it didn't work out then, and they didn't win, so now we'll do that. You know, we can't keep doing this. We have so much work already. We talk about money, we talk about, oh, we don't want to spend any money. And if we start building the affordable houses, the very people who are saying or agree with us are the very people that go, we want only 2% LTP. You know, we can't build houses as a council unless other ratepayers pay for it. You know, we've got to get a bit real here. And I do have absolute concern about affordability, but we are just part of the puzzle. And it is a puzzle because no one's worked out how to fix this yet, unfortunately. But I just think that we're now, you know, putting ourselves on another path where we'll get beaten up where we're getting beaten up today, they're saying we've only built 100 houses. In this report, I see, it says dwellings with code compliance certificates issues, completed dwellings, retained affordability 482. So I don't get the numbers. It's so confusing here. And whether they're in only 2 places or not, it doesn't really matter. They're there. And I hope we can get more. But I'm really, and I probably will be, you know, I don't like this, I don't like that, I don't want people to have houses, but I don't want to vote for this because I'm on that steering group. And there's lots of things that we can actually do. And we need to concentrate on those 16 points. And this might be one of them because none of us can remember. But, you know, I can't support this. We can't be all things to all people. We can't solve all the problems, but we've certainly done our part. And it cost us millions of dollars and I'd say thousands and tens of thousands of hours, probably more, to get the unitary plan. And now we just want to unpick it. So that's why I won't vote for B. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to invite Megan to... Megan's just been looking up that recommendation of the Mayoral Housing Task Force, recommendation 6.
Yeah, through the chair, just confirming that the 2 referenced there are ones where council will collaborate with others on. They're not the ones on, you know, under the heading of council actions. So just confirming that.
Sorry, that one?
Yeah, is a collaboration one. One with that's been in those 30 or, you know, however many there were.
So we're already doing this then?
Oh, we...
yes, if it's in there,
Excuse me, have you finished speaking?
Yeah, just a minute, please.
Is it just a chat session?
Oh, sorry,
No, it's
Kathy, you're always
clarification.
butting in. Jeez.
No, I'm not actually.
You do.
Excuse me, order. Megan, have you finished?
No, I mean, there's been research and work done in the past on things like tenure, but this would be one where the steering group would, based on this recommendation, would prioritise this one so that we would do some specific work now on this recommendation coming out from the task force. That's what B is saying.
Yeah.
Thank you. Member Namani.
I probably just want to talk about the good news story within the bad news story. So granted, not enough affordable housing has been produced through the Housing Accord and but for Māori and their contribution,
Very well.
by our figures, 60% of the completed retained affordable housing stock has been produced by mana whenua or Māori-led developments. Now that, for me, that kind of says something to council in terms of where the leadership is lying around the development of affordable housing in Tamaki Makaurau. And so I just want to pay acknowledgement to ngā mana whenua o Tamaki Makaurau and their collective and in their individual capacities that have actually taken this issue on board within the Auckland region and is kind of really shining through in the data that's been provided to date. I think another point that indirectly it does raise is that, you know, despite some of the naysayers in different contexts, treaty settlements are good for Tamaki Makaurau.
Here.
That's what this is about too. And so I think as we move forward and start to talk about things and to and fro about the importance of relationships with mana whenua and mātāwaka, you know, remember this good news story. And perhaps, you know, going forward, some of the key initiatives will be council taking a back seat and allowing the leadership, not just mana whenua, but certainly mana whenua, to shine through in the provision of affordable housing in Auckland. So,
Thank you. Good words. Councillor Sayers.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I think it's just very appropriate, and thank you for the Independent Māori Statutory Board to mention that. I think it's most appropriate. Mr Chair, this, in the report it talked about contacting a group of developers, and you answered a question earlier on that. That list of developers that you've contacted, is that confidential? Can we get supplied that list?
Through the chair, the table that's in the back of the report gives you every single SHA and the status of those SHAs and what's been consented and not been consented in those SHAs. So essentially that information is already in here.
Attachment A.
So does that tell me who the developer is or the development? So the developer, the person or entity behind it, how do we find that information?
Personally, I'll be a little bit reluctant to hand it out because in some of those situations, for the sites where there has been no activity, those developers are no longer the owners of those sites. So there's been handovers throughout the process, but...
Are you saying the majority of that information you won't supply is confidential or can be supplied?
Well, through the SHA establishment process, which was done under confidentiality, and the confidential item, that information was provided. If the chair thinks it's appropriate to provide that information, we can obtain it.
What is the purpose?
Satisfied with the answer? Can you get it?
I
You
think
look a
there's a
bit pensive.
question.
You look like you've got another question.
I was just waiting for your answer to that, Mr Chair, that was all.
Thank you. Okay.
Have you got an answer to that question?
No, I,
Yes. I'm helping.
look, I'm going to have to, in terms of the commercial sensitivity of that information, I'm going to have to rely on the staff.
It wouldn't be normal.
So I think you need to have a conversation offline with the staff on that.
And just in terms of clarification for some of your intent, Mr Chair, and B there, is it, and Councillor Cooper, I think, was trying to loop, oh, she's gone. Oh, no, she's still there. The other initiatives that we've got underway, I'm probably particularly thinking about the consenting made easy process. Are you trying to incorporate those in that? Are you trying to tease those out further? Or are you taking
I believe
another
that's in another recommendation, which is being implemented now. Consenting made easy is being implemented right now. I'll just check with Megan, is consenting made easy is a separate recommendation?
Well, it's the way in which the council works for its regulatory processes, so the way in which it processes its consents and things. So yes, that is currently underway now. It's completed, the process is completed, and we're now implementing that.
It was recommendation, I think 14.
Right, of those
16
16.
or 14 consenting made easy program. That program is being implemented now.
That's right.
Okay,
It's underway.
right, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I want to congratulate Member Namani for what she said, because although, for example, in our ward, my ward, even though we've got the highest median price, one of the biggest successes is affordable housing from Ngāti Whātua. So that just shows you the complete contrast. Look, I'm struggling a bit with B. Can you just tell me who wrote that recommendation? Was it a staff recommendation? I mean, it wasn't in the report, so obviously it's come post that.
Just to give you the background, I made a request of staff, how would we address affordability generally, and the staff came back with this recommendation. I'll ask Megan to explain.
Yeah, no, I'm happy. Yes, so I did draft this up. So what I was trying to do was, rather than have another group or work being done outside of some existing work that will potentially be happening, I just thought it would be nice to tie the two together. So that was where I was coming from with the steering group.
I suppose my concern is the bit that's been added at the end, post your the possibility of a unity plan change, because I just think that's opening a can of worms. That decision's been made, and I just think that it would be a wrong thing to do. So I suppose I'm just saying that I will struggle therefore with B. I actually believe in the intent, but actually I think Councillor Cooper hit the nail on the head. So I'm happy with A, but I just don't think we should go there again with the unitary plan, so I won't be supporting B.
Just reminding councillors that we made a similar decision on Hobsonville just 3 items back.
Yeah, but it wasn't a fundamental change.
But this is region-wide, this is not one part.
Region-wide issues. But look, Councillor Hulse again, please.
Thank you. Just a question. So I'm not totally uncomfortable with where we're going. My question is, looking at the reinstituting of the retained affordability, which was a heartbreaking decision that we made based on the fact that even though we had required by law a 10% affordability, we weren't getting any built. So simply just doing that didn't achieve anything. My question is, I'm about getting affordable houses built, not passing recommendations. If we do this, can we look at something in the unitary plan that actually addresses the issue of the change in banking criteria and the funding, joint funding or matched funding from government that is part of the retained affordability criteria? So what my question is that I'm asking, Mr Chair, is rather than simply go, yay, let's change the unitary plan and whack something back in that didn't work, despite the fact that the SHAs tried very hard to deal with affordability, it didn't work, and that I agree with you. They simply didn't get built. Can we take it from this recommendation that that work will be done and that will inform a plan change? Because I think that is a more sensitive way. I'm worried that all the work will wait for another 18 months or another year or however long, but I don't mind if the plan change waits until we've got the better information. I'd like us to start enacting some of the practical stuff now. Does that make sense? I think Megan gets what I'm saying.
I'll ask Megan to reply, please.
So that is one of the, again, the recommendations coming out from the task force,
Yeah.
if I go back to that, around banking regulations and things. So again, by tying this into the task force, it allows the steering group to look at the package of recommendations from the steering group and prioritise those. So I think it, you know, the steering group can certainly hear that and could prioritise both aspects and the banking one as well. So we can do some work together. I think it's important, though, to tie them together as opposed to shooting off and doing all sorts of kind of various work in various places. That would be the benefit, I think, in just tying it up to the steering group.
And there's some work that we can start tomorrow. There's some implementation we can start tomorrow. We're not waiting until, you know, the first quarter of next year. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Thank you. Councillor Wayne Walker again. Question?
Yeah, I may be coming around a little bit, Mr Chair, but my concern, if we're going to have a report, that it needs to look honestly at the SHA, the special housing legislation, which I regard as a creature of government, and recognise what a dismal failure it was, that it needs to be killed off so it never happens again, and there is an exception around iwi, and I acknowledge
Councillor,
that
you've already spoken. Do you have a
no,
question at this
I'm
time?
making a different point, and if you really want me to,
Sorry,
I can
you
make
can't.
it as a.
I'm being reminded by members that they...
In which case, I will make it as a question. Is it not true that the special housing area legislation has escalated the value of property in many areas, particularly when it has been sold and on-sold and sold again? That it has caused development in areas that are flood-prone, areas where there is inadequate transport infrastructure, and actually made a worse mess than we were to start with.
It is not a question, and it won't be answered by the staff.
And
They're
could
not in a
that be
position to
reported
answer
on?
that question.
Because that is the blunt reality.
Councillor Hills.
Thank you. I'll be supporting both, but this is frustrating, and I think the accord was frustrating. I think a lot of people around this table wanted to do the right thing, and we're often being said in the media, you know, if council doesn't do this, then they're at fault, and housing affordability is going to be council's fault. But it shows by the thousands and thousands of sections consented and ready to build on and not being built on, and that is the problem. There's no houses being built, or not enough. 6,500 new dwellings in a year, and we're increasing population as well as people having more kids and moving out of home and all that sort of thing. So I think while we're all getting annoyed with each other around the table and you know, playing politics and stuff, I think that the end of the thing is
Politicians, mate.
that we are politicians, but everyone, you know,
Members, respect speakers. Respect your colleagues.
it's all good. The thing is that we're missing the point is that the fact we're doing this, or we're putting up another something to try and get people more homes, because we have serious issues to deal with. And we can, I think everyone's saying the same thing, but just in different ways. And if we don't do anything, or we say we don't want to try something else, then nothing will happen from our end. But hopefully the government, whatever shape it is in a couple of days, will build more state houses and will build affordable housing of some form. And we need to put the pressure on there. But I think there's other things in there around tenure and other ways we can investigate or speed up that process that could be possible. Jennifer Keesmat was here a couple of weeks ago who said that they've initiated 20% affordable housing on every development in Toronto. That they've said they're building tons of houses, but the numbers actually didn't reduce affordability. Didn't make housing more affordable. It did increase the number of dwellings, but actually it was that intense structural changes that they just had to say, we need to do this. It might not be popular in some sectors, but actually if you seriously want affordable housing, and all of us do, but there's sort of nothing happening in the area apart from the leadership in the areas of iwi leadership, because that's actually a structural component coming down and building houses for their people, which is what we want on a grand scale, hopefully from the government as well. It's the same sort of thing. So I think everyone needs to have a group hug after this and understand we're all pushing for the same thing. And I think if we keep pushing, we'll hopefully get there. But at the end of the day, it's not about us. It's about the people we're trying to build houses for, create communities for, especially the young people now and future generations, or the people out there who are singing with the homeless today. So, I think it's stressful that we're talking about these issues, but if we don't do something, or at least keep putting the pressure on government, then we're still stuck in the same conversation a year later. So, I don't know. I think we're doing the right thing, but just in different ways. Thanks.
Just a question.
Councillor Cooper, you got a question?
Question, yeah.
And then last call with Member Taiperi, then we'll go to the vote.
Would you be willing to investigate the possibility of a unitary plan change to accommodate retained affordability in a C? Because I could support B, but I can't support C because we know that it hasn't worked.
Councillor Casey, would you like to have
building. No.
You'd like to have it incorporated?
Well, it's your...
I actually need to, I didn't check with Member Taiperi when I incorporated that, and I'm obliged to. Would you incorporate, or would you like to see it as a standalone C, Member Taiperi?
So may I speak first before I actually fully answer that question?
You can. So there's a request there. We'll just park that request, and the question is awaiting a reply.
Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I'll move an extension of time. Do I have a second? Yes. Thank you, Councillor Hulse. All those in favour say aye. Contrary, no. Declare that carried. 2800. Member Taiperi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I seconded the motion as it was because it was the message that needed to be sent. And again, I don't see anything there that says you must build 1,000 affordable houses by Christmas or one next week. It does remind me of the earlier subject. I don't really want to name the item because of the drawn-out discussion it was, but it's just like it's like we don't want to do anything. And I think to myself, it's through fear of getting another report and losing Wayne here. I just feel that the information needs to be, put and investigated. It's part of a program that's already going anyway. I just don't see the real issues. Now, what I heard earlier was, this is to come and answer that thing before, was you had said earlier about, for example, unitary plan amendments or plan variations and the like. Because I think, well, there's a range of possibilities. And I don't want to sit here today and list them either, because through fear of missing something out or making it up as we go. So I just assumed that the unitary plan potential and other potentials would be included in the investigation, which would come back as reportage to us. And then there may be that council's in a position as an enabler, not as a builder or a developer, but as an enabler to provide mechanisms and policies within your realm to be able to make things happen. And I am actually a big supporter of unitary plan potential, and I know there are others, but I didn't do it to set out for one thing. I did it to support what you'd put up to get it investigated and get it part of the prioritisation of the steering group, which I'm on, and I just thought there'd be a range of things. So I liked when you said, for example, and I know Councillor Casey wanted it precise, and I see now we're talking about separating it out, and I just, to be honest, don't know why we had to list anything. That's the part that gets me. And just accept that the investigation will be inclusive, and then the reportage back to this committee, as you've said will happen, will leave the door open for us to consider a range of mechanisms. So if I was to be perfectly honest, I actually don't even want the last line in there, because I think it just creates a problem for us to achieve the end result, and that's affordable housing throughout Tamaki Makaurau. So I would actually ask myself, to Councillor Casey, if she would consider the fact that let's take it out because it's already going to be in the potential, as Mr. Quinn had already said, it's part of the tools of what he's going to use to do the investigation. And I'm a big fan, I'm a supporter of the unitary plan, potential plan variation, Councillor Casey. So I don't think by asking I'm actually killing that off. I'm actually hoping that that's going to make it more successful to achieve the outcome. So my answer to the question is I actually don't support the last line in as the seconder, and I don't do that to offend Councillor Casey, but I do it so we can be inclusive of all options available to us as you as a council and us as members of this committee. So I put it to you like that.
Thank you.
As the mover of the motion, of course, but yeah, I don't support that last line because I think it could fail. B could fail on that alone, and I wouldn't want that to happen because I think there's a lot of opportunity for us. Thank you.
Okay, members, I'd just like to, we're towards the end of the day, and thank you for that. Councillor Casey, you've heard the seconder to the motion.
Yeah, I'm happy for it to be as an example, for example.
E.g.
E.g.
I need to just check with Member Taipari. He is the mover of the primary, seconder of the primary motion.
So that as an example, and I don't want to do that on the basis of there's going to be 10 more examples listed in the next 3 minutes. But I'm happy with that because it's as an example. And it's to get information back to the council. So I do support E.g.
Okay. Councillor Casey, thank you. Member Taipari, as the mover, I'm in support of that as well. So we'll change that to E.g., the possibility of a unitary plan change to accommodate. Is it retained affordability and relative affordability? I think it's retained and relative. Just check it with it should be both categories.
That's what David said.
I'll just hold it as it is.
Let's just affordability. Let's just affordability.
Got 2 examples.
Just take out the word retained. Thank you for everybody's contributions on this. It's a tough one, and I really do appreciate the thinking that's gone into this, and I know that we're reflecting our communities on this, and it's outstanding work. So thank you, and I will put that to the vote. All those in favour say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye, and contrary no.
Aye.
Declare that carried. Thank you, members. Going to 15. Do I have a mover for 15? This is... I'll move then. Seconded, Councillor Official Collins. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Contrary no. Declare that carried. 16, we don't have any extraordinary business. I'll just check with staff. All handled. I'll close the meeting. Thank you, members, today. Appreciate it. Thank you.